Beta Shift Helmsman's Log. Lieutenant Robert Hargrove recording. Stardate 161225.
Starship Enterprise, standing by on the bridge with the Christmas song.
It's Christmas on Earth.
Chestnuts roasting on an open fire.
I'm messing. I had to throw that in there. Let me find you the real opening I was going to use. Here we go. Let It Snow, or Make It So. The Jean-Luc Picard mix. This week's entry is brought to us by our friends over at Wally's aluminum shaping process. You can tell I'm a little out of practice. Run by our friend Wally Fortier. Hit him up. He's living in Italy right now. I'm thirsty. I know it's been a while, but hey, you know what? I'm drinking some beer. One large beer, cold.
Shut up, Wesley.
All right. Ooh.
Oh, the fire is slowly
The replicator hooked me up today. I am drinking St. Bernardus Christmas Ale. 10%.
Make it so. Make it so. Make it so.
Make it so. I think I shall. Let's pop this bad boy open. A new consumption device. As such, as it is Christmas Day on Earth, I am showing off some new gifts, such as this bad boy, as well as this bad boy. Oh, actually this bad boy. This is just among a few of the things I received as gifts. Right, let's get this show going. Kapla! Oh, that's as good as I remembered. Got to start this one off the right way. Got to start it off with birthdays. Before I do that, though, I just want to say that I've recently been assigned to the Starship Voyager. As I said, the Beta Shift Helmsman. And when you know it, on our first cruise, on our first mission, we get swept away to the Delta Quadrant. I mean, I had a bad feeling about this, but hey, you know what? I don't know how well you can see it, but I'm just a lieutenant junior grade, all right? Not a whole lot I can do about it, but accept the situation and move on. Okay, now let's get to the birthdays. I just mentioned him earlier. He's my sponsor. Wally, I saw that you moved to Italy. I hope you're having a good time. I hope you're enjoying it. Hey, here's the next year for football. I have a feeling that Denver's last game is actually their last game this week. Hell, my Colts have already been eliminated. But hey, as long as Indy's still playing, I'm still rooting. So here's to us. Star Trek on the handle, and the famous moniker, to boldly go where no man has gone before. All right, next on the list, guy that actually works with me here, Tomoki Yoshimi. I probably butchered that. If I did, I apologize. Tomoki-san, konnichiwa. Or I'm sorry, it would be Gombawa right now. How are you? I hope your birthday was a good one. And I'm looking forward to seeing you again. Actually, I will see you again. So, hey, this is for you. All right, next on the list. This is one of three guys. They do an outstanding podcast. Are you more than three now? Because I know you've had other people like I know you've had somebody. I know you've had a person named Guy, and I know there's been Victoria on there on your podcast. I'm talking about David Duncan, one of the original Synthaholics. I actually did an episode with him. Good God, has it been a year already? It was actually recorded over Labor Day weekend. We talked about the inner light. But David, I had fun doing that. We should do it again. And in the interim, happy birthday. I hope you had a happy birthday and holiday. Next on the list. This lady, I've known her I went to school with her. She was a year ahead of me. Rebecca Flynn. What's going on? How you doing? I hope you had a good Christmas. I hope you celebrated well, partied hard. Well, not too hard. Hey, this one's for you. Next on the list, a gentleman I actually know here, Earth Station Okinawa. Been bumping into him here a lot lately. Robert Streif. How you doing? How's life treating you? I hope you celebrated well. I hope you had a Merry Christmas. Hope you also had a happy birthday. There, I'll drink one for you. Moving on, this next lady, I went to school with her. She's a couple years ahead of me. I am talking about Jessica Webb. Jessica, what's going on? I hope you had a happy birthday. I hope things are going well for you. I really do. Hope you celebrated well. Hope you had a Merry Christmas. Hey, here's to you. All right, next on the list. You've heard this guy. You've heard me mention this guy quite a few times on Prosper. He is a repeat. If I'm thinking of the same guy, it's been a while. He is a repeat. Identify this winner. I'm talking about the Honorable Trevor Calcum. Trevor, my friend, what is going on? How are you doing? I haven't heard from you in a while. I hope things are going well for you. Hope life's going good, treating you well, all that good stuff. I hope you had a Merry Christmas. I want to pause for the cause for a second. Identify this has not gone away. It's not gone away. However, I've been doing these randomly here lately. I don't want to throw in and identify this in the event that I can't actually honor you. That I can't actually honor the winners right away. Because the way I've been going about maybe once, maybe twice a month if I'm lucky. Been going once a month, and everything just backs up. Greetings back up. Winners back up. Ooh, excuse me. But no, identify this has not gone away. It's not gone away. It's just actually been kind of on hiatus until I've been able to iron this out. That being said, let's move on. Next birthday, I actually met this guy while I was living in Germany. I'm talking about Jay Kelly. Jay, my friend, what is up? How are things going? Hope life's treating you well. I'm right there with you on football. I really am. I mean, my Colts just got eliminated today by your arch nemesis, the Oakland Raiders. Ugh. But hey, you know what? They earned it, especially after we put out Derek Carr. But hey, I don't wish an injury on anybody. It is what it is. Indianapolis, better luck next year. Y'all better make some good moves. But Jay, to you, happy birthday. Next up on the list. Ooh, I haven't mentioned this guy in a while. I actually saw where he's been on Facebook here the last day or so. Alan Lawson. Hey man, what's going on? How you doing? I hope you're having a Merry Christmas. Hope things are going well for you. I really do. And hey, you remember what I told you the last time I saw you? You ever need anything, hit me up. I'll do what I can for you. Even if it's just a chit-chat, shoot the breeze, whatever it is, what have you. Hit me up. I'm down. I'm game. Just remember the time difference. I'm sure you do. Hey, this one's for you, though. Couple more. Almost there. Next up on the list for today. Actually, the next two are for today. The first one I know here. I'm talking about James J.J. Johnson. JJ, what's going on, brother? How's life treating you? Hope you had a Merry Christmas. You know I did. Lived it up. Did what I could here. Hey, JJ, happy birthday. And last but not least, a wonderful gal. I have known her pretty much all my life. Started in school. It is what it is. When was the last time I saw you? I want to say I saw you last about 11 years ago. I'm talking about Sarah Brewer. How are you doing? What is up? Are you doing okay? Is life going good for you? I hope so. I really do. Having known me as long as you do, I mean it when I say that. But Sarah, this one's for you. Happy birthday. All right. That's it for the birthdays. Got some additional greetings. Not many. I have about 4 of them. The first 2, you've heard them mentioned a few times. I am referring to Amber Palmer Cruz and Brooks Dorsey. We last night, Christmas Eve, went over to their house, had a game night and dinner, did a little gift exchange, lived it up, had a good time. To you two, it's always a pleasure. Looking forward to doing it with you again. And hey, see you outside. All right, next on the list. I actually work hand in hand with this guy here, Bryant Shockley. Now, Bryant and I, not too long ago, we attended Comic-Con here at our station, Okinawa. I went dressed as Commander Riker, and he went dressed as Geordi LaForge. I've got pictures of it on Facebook, but I tell you what, when you have a good idea, you have a good idea. And when you strike gold like that, you're there. Excuse me. I mean, you're there. You've got it made. You're set. Nothing else can be said. But hey, Bryant, here's to you, man. Looking forward to hanging out with you some more for our last 11 months here. And finally, I got to give this guy crap. I always do. Josh Baker over Beer and Song of the Day. He and I are in the midst of our football contest, which it's funny because I do need to bring up football. All right, so Josh and I, as you may or may not know, we have a little football contest going on between us. What it is, it's basically a you pick 'em contest. We go through the schedule for every week of the regular season. We started week 4 this year. We're gonna start week 1 next year. It's one of those. Hey, we're ironing out the bugs this year to make a good product next year. But with that being said, I thought he was gonna get one up on me this week because I forgot in my picks. I forgot to list the Bucs Saints game. I didn't list it. I didn't make a pick. That game had already started by the time I caught it, so I lost one on that one automatically because I didn't pick. But at the same time, Josh picked the Buccaneers and the Saints won, so he lost that one too. So that put me back to +2. That being said, here's this week's games. Giants-Eagles on Thursday. I predicted the Giants 21-17. I completely blew that one. The thing is, so did Josh. The Eagles won that one, so it didn't matter what the score was that we predicted. If we pick the winner, the score counts as a bonus, but if we miss the score, we're pretty much even. Let's see. Bills-Dolphins. Pick the Bills on that one. Yeah, good call. Jets-Cheaters. Well, we knew the Jets weren't going to show up, but we didn't think they were going to wait until the last minute to show up. Cheaters ended up winning that one. That was a total blowout. The Bills-Dolphins game actually went to overtime. I was not ready for that one. The funny thing is, before I go any further, I do want to mention that Josh and I, with the exception of the Buccaneers-Saints game, we picked the same except for one. Except for one. And I'll get to that one. Titans-Jaguars. Who'd have known the Jaguars would show up out of nowhere? Certainly not this guy. They blew the pants off the Titans. Vikings-Packers. Pick the Packers. We knew it was going to happen. Chargers-Browns. Here we go. Pick the Chargers to win this one. And I'm going to paraphrase Al Bundy because he was talking about the Rams at the time. But if you lose to the Browns, you're out of the league. Well, the Chargers did just that. Cleveland won their first game in the next to last week of the regular season. But hey, here it is for Cleveland. They went from having with their win today, they went from having the worst record in the NFL to having the worst record in the NFL. I say that because the 49ers beat the Rams for their second win. It's true. Oh, by the way, I picked the Rams for that one. That's also my toilet bowl pick. Let me get back on track. Redskins, Bears. Pick the Redskins on that one. I actually don't know how that one ended up. Falcons, Panthers. Pick the Falcons on that one. The Falcons, I believe, did win. They also clinched their playoff spot as the NFC South representative. Colts, Raiders. I mentioned this one earlier. When I came back to that game at halftime, it was 33-14. Colts started coming back. They started coming back I came back about midway through the third quarter, and it was 33-14. Colts started coming back, but the Raiders held on just a little bit. Final score, 33-22. The Colts were officially eliminated today, and the Texans clinched with their win over frickin' Cincinnati. Cardinals, Seahawks. I picked the Seahawks, and that was actually the game of the week over at Beer and Song of the Day. As I mentioned, I already mentioned the 49ers, Rams, and I just mentioned the Bengals, Texans. I picked the Texans to win, but I was rooting for the Bengals. And the last games to be played this week, Ravens, Steelers. I picked the Steelers, but I'm rooting for the Ravens. We need a team to get in there to be able to beat the cheaters in the playoffs. Broncos, Chiefs. I picked the Chiefs, but I'm rooting for the Broncos. Like I said, I don't think the Broncos have officially been eliminated yet, but I think it's going to happen tomorrow. I really do. I hate to say it, but I really do. Lions, Cowboys. Now, this is the game where Josh and I picked different from each other. This was the only game. He picked the Lions, and I picked the Cowboys. I don't see the Lions showing up, and if they do show up, I don't see them being able to overtake the Cowboys. If they do, they won't be able to hold that lead for long. Alrighty, that was the football picks. I can't remember if I said it already, but I started this week +2. Josh and I picked the same except for the Lions, Cowboys, and the exception of the Buccaneers and Saints. I didn't post for the Bucs and Saints. I missed that game, but Josh's pick for the win or loss, so he missed that one too. Puts me back at +2 until Tuesday. Tuesday for me. All right, here we go. Let's move on to this week in Trek history, shall we? First event, December 20th, 1970. Actress Nicole DeBoer was born. She's known for playing Lieutenant Ezri Dax in the 7th and final season of Star Trek. Crap. Excuse me. No, it wasn't Star Trek crap. There is no such thing yet. Star Trek Deep Space Nine. She turns 46, and actually her character was referred to as Ally McTrill because of her neurotic personality. December 21st, 1992, Chain of Command Part 2 of The Next Generation airs. I mention that because that is the last episode of The Next Generation to air without another Trek episode running beside it. The next episode of Star Trek to air was the pilot episode for Deep Space Nine, Emissary. Emissary. I'm thirsty. All right. I had a page that was up for this. It's not wanting to work. I don't know. Oh, here we go. December 23rd, 1964. Star Trek is mentioned in the New York Times as one of 7 one-hour pilots currently under consideration by NBC. Other pilots under consideration are I Spy, Convoy, Indictment, The Ghostbreakers, The Mayor, and The Wackiest Ship in the Army. And I'm going to tell you right now, I've only heard of I Spy. of course, Star Trek too, but out of that list, I've only heard of I Spy. Let's see, December 24th, 1945. Nicholas Meyer was born. Now, this gentleman, excuse me, he's been involved with a handful of Star Trek productions. Excuse me. He directed The Wrath of Khan. He wrote The Voyage Home, and he wrote and directed Star Trek VI: The Undiscovered Country. And he is currently listed as a member of the production crew for the upcoming Star Trek Beyond, who has recently cast their lead actor. If I didn't think to write her name down, but if I try to think about it, I will get it wrong. But she plays Sasha on The Walking Dead, for anybody that follows that. I think there's a Williams in her actual name. It's dead, Jim. Time for a reload. Man, I don't know about some of the other Starfleet crew members on Voyager right now, but I don't know how I feel about some of the Maquis being considered for senior officer positions. I mean, no, I'm going to leave it at that. I don't want it to be looked at as disagreeing with my commanding officer. But hey, this is why she has 4 pips on the collar. Oh, I have one more birthday. Born on this day, 1945, Rick Berman was born. Now, he started out his career with Star Trek back in the early days of the Next Generation. I mean the early days. I think he was a production assistant at the time. And eventually, at the time of Gene Roddenberry's declining health, he actually was promoted to executive producer. Excuse me, and he took over the reins upon Gene's death in 1991. That is all I have for this week in Trek history. Now, let's move into the databanks. This week's episode we're going to look at is entitled Parallax. Spoiler alert! The following segment contains spoilers for this episode and plot details. That being said, in sickbay, Lieutenant Carey is being treated by the doctor after getting into a conflict over the power grid with B'Elanna Torres. He is extremely furious with Torres, telling Chakotay and Tuvok that he wants her kept away from engineering. After Chakotay tells Carey that he will have a word with her. Chakotay and Tuvok leave sickbay and discuss the situation in the corridor. A difference in opinion occurs when Tuvok wants Torres confined to the brig, with the possibility that she'll receive a court-martial on the ship, while Chakotay prefers to deal with her on his own. Chakotay is able to persuade Tuvok to let him deal with Torres and enters a turbolift alone, while Tuvok warns that he intends to make a full report in his security log. While proceeding to Torres' quarters, Chakotay passes crewman Jarvan and Ensign Seska, who let him know that they will support him in any way possible, if it comes to it. Chakotay's bad mood becomes worse at being told this and threatens to personally throw them in the brig for mutiny if he hears it again, leaving Jarvan and Seska shocked. In her quarters, Torres is fuming to the point that when she hears the door chime, she throws a plate at the door, which misses hitting Chakotay. He hands her a pad containing information on Joe Carey's medical status, and furiously tells her that if she'd hit him a little harder, she might have caused serious and permanent injury, and now he has a Vulcan wanting to court-martial her on one side and a crew ready to mutiny on the other. Torres mentions how Carey irritates her. Chakotay tries to coax Torres into apologizing to Carey and getting to know him over a cup of hot pajuta, but Torres scoffs at the very idea. Chakotay then tells her that she could use the help and support of people like Carey if she wants to be the next chief engineer. Torres is suspicious about this, pointing out that Carey is next in line, but Chakotay tells her that she is the better engineer. He moves to leave her quarters, and Torres asks about what Captain Janeway thinks of the situation. Chakotay reveals that he hasn't told her yet. I'm going to try to do my best Janeway here. Nah, screw it. I'll just read it. Captain's log, stardate 48439.7. As we maintain a course back to the Alpha Quadrant, we're conducting what would normally be routine maintenance to the ship. Routine, that is, if we had access to a starbase. In the briefing room, the senior staff members are discussing the situation of the power and personnel shortage, as Neelix and Kess invite themselves into the meeting. Given the energy shortage, dwindling rations, and problems with the replicators, Kess recommends converting Cargo Bay 2 into a hydroponics lab so that they can grow their own vegetables. Janeway agrees and puts Kess in charge of the project. Chakotay and Janeway then discuss the open chief engineer's position, for which Chakotay recommends Torres. Irritated by the suggestion, Janeway wonders, following all the complaints she's heard about Torres, exactly what job it is that Chakotay thinks she can do. He assures her that she is an excellent engineer and can do the job. Somewhat taken aback, Janeway then brings up the topic of medical staff due to the fact that the EMH, or Emergency Medical Hologram, which is substituting as a chief medical officer, is unable to leave sickbay and also has no bedside manner. It is decided that someone should train as a field medic, and Tom Paris is unhappy at being selected. Having taken 2 semesters of biochemistry in Starfleet Academy, he is the most qualified candidate. Ugh. The staff briefing is interrupted when Voyager shakes. Those present at the meeting all proceed to the bridge. Sesko reports that Voyager has encountered a spatial disturbance, which is actually a Type 4 quantum singularity. A ship is caught near the event horizon and sends a transmission to Voyager. The message is erratic and cannot be understood. Voyager sends a transmission back, but there's no response. Janeway inquires about a tractor beam, but subspace interference in the area is extremely heavy. Chakotay contacts engineering and asks Torres, who recommends remodulating a tractor beam to match the subspace interference. Janeway, who is upset at Chakotay contacting Torres directly, rather than consulting the senior officer in charge, interrupts Chakotay and puts Carrie in charge. She then asks Chakotay to see her in the ready room. Janeway and Chakotay begin an argument over duty and protocol on Voyager. Janeway tells him that his behavior on the bridge was unacceptable. Chakotay states that he contacted Torres because he felt she would give him a quick answer. He explains that if she received a senior position, and if the former Maquis crew members were granted more responsibility in general, they would finally become more loyal. Janeway argues that all the Starfleet officers have worked hard and earned their commissions, while the Maquis are criminals who, apart from Chakotay, who was a command level officer before his resignation, are untrained and undisciplined, so it would be asking too much that the Starfleet crew be forced to accept a Maquis being promoted above them, especially one like Torres, who has already shown she can't control herself and couldn't handle the Academy. She then tells Chakotay... What? That doesn't make sense. Okay. She then tells Chakotay that he needs to stop seeing them as specifically his crew. Chakotay retorts that he won't be Janeway's token Maquis officer, and the reason he treats them as his own people is that if he weren't looking out for them, no one else would. Janeway tells him that she'll consider any other Maquis officer he wants to recommend, but he insists Torres is the right choice for chief engineer, and asks Janeway to at least talk to Torres to get to know her better. Excuse me. Kess enters sickbay to retrieve some nitrogenated soil for her hydroponics lab. The doctor begins commenting on how he is going to be used for every minor medical problem that's going to occur. Kess notices the doctor's sensitivity in his behavior, but also notices that he appears shorter. The doctor performs a diagnostic on his imaging processor and discovers he has decreased in height by 10.4 centimeters. He contacts Harry Kim and asks for assistance, but he's too busy. Before Kess leaves with her soil samples, she inquires if the doctor has chosen a name, which he has not. She deactivates his program and leaves. The subspace tractor beam has been completed and is used. The beam is able to penetrate the Singularity's event horizon, but the new power relays begin to fail. Voyager is jolted and begins to be pulled into the Singularity. Full reverse is engaged, but the tractor beam cannot be disabled, causing massive hull stress. Janeway orders the impulse engines disengaged, and Voyager begins moving forward again. She then orders the tractor beam disengaged, at which Carey cuts the power feed manually. The tractor beam is disengaged. In need of help, Janeway orders setting a course for Illidaria, a nearby technologically advanced society which Neelix has suggested might be willing to help at full impulse. Janeway decides to follow Chakotay's suggestion to talk with Torres and invites her to the ready room. The captain tries to bond with Torres by talking to her about her past, especially with Starfleet Academy. Torres then notes that she didn't like Starfleet systems and leaves, saying that she didn't want anything to do with Starfleet then and is sorry that she has to now. After Torres leaves, the Doctor contacts Janeway using monitor input 47 and notifies her of the error in his imaging system. He also relays news to her that 9 crew members have reported severe headaches, muscle spasms, sudden waves of dizziness, all of which are possibly related to the quantum singularity. The ship jolts and Janeway returns to the bridge, while leaving the channel to the Doctor open. Apparently, Voyager has found another Type 4 quantum singularity that has all the same properties as the one discovered earlier. Reports indicate, however, that Voyager is back to the same position as before, and that it is the same quantum singularity. Voyager is turned in the opposite direction from the singularity, and warp is engaged. At 12 million kilometers from the singularity, it appears ahead of the ship again. All departments are ordered to submit reports, and a staff meeting is planned. Chakotay requests that Torres be invited along if she is still being considered as chief engineer, and Janeway decides to include her. In engineering, shortly beforehand, Carey submits news of the briefing to Torres, but tells her that he speaks for engineering and warns her not to say anything unless directly asked, which prompts Seska to privately comment to Torres that she should have broken more than his nose. Yeah, I get that. In a corridor, Tuvok and Kim discuss the singularity situation. Kim changes the subject and inquires about the conflict in engineering, noting that he has heard Starfleet and Maquis are figuratively at each other's throats. Kim, all of a sudden, collapses. Tuvok helps him and begins to escort him to sickbay. During the staff briefing, the Doctor reports that 27 more crew members have since encountered the symptoms he mentioned earlier, a number that includes Kim. The Doctor has no idea what's going on and therefore cannot provide a treatment. The shrinking is still occurring. At this point, he has lost 68 centimeters of height. Excuse me. The staff moves on to the subject of the singularity, for which no progress has been made. However, using the problem with the Doctor's imaging system, Torres, who has in fact been behaving herself, is able to determine that she could use a localized dampening field around the external sensors to contact the other ship. Oh, excuse me. Janeway agrees with this idea and dismisses the staff to begin work. As Chakotay leaves, Janeway gives him a small nod to communicate that Torres is starting to impress her. The deflector dish is modified and the dampening field is deployed. The crew receive the transmission from the ship again. It is cleared up and becomes evident to the crew that it is the same message Janeway transmitted earlier. The ship is Voyager. Torres has an explanation for the seeming duplication of the starship, so the staff returns to the briefing room. Torres vocally uses a reflection in water as a metaphor for the current situation, except that what the Voyager's crew is viewing is a time-delayed image of themselves. They estimate it will take 9 hours until Voyager is destroyed by the singularity. So Torres recommends that they find a crack to escape. Remembering when they first entered the anomaly, Janeway and Torres think that Voyager made a hole in the event horizon, and that they will need to find the same hole. Finishing each other's sentences, warp particles, is the idea developed by Torres and Janeway. If all goes to plan, such particles will make the crack visible, allowing Voyager to fly out. The deflector dish is deactivated and warp particles are routed to the deflector. The particles are deployed and Paris locates an irregularity in the event horizon. The hole is too small, so they will have to expand it. Torres recommends using a Dekion beam to expand the hole. Voyager is too far to emit the beam, so a shuttlecraft has to be used. With their understanding of the finer points of temporal mechanics, both Janeway and Torres board the shuttle and leave Voyager. On the shuttlecraft, the Dekion beam is prepared. Torres decides to use this moment to apologize about her earlier behavior, and also recalls that she left the Academy because she felt she couldn't make it in Starfleet. Janeway notes that Professor Chapman thought Torres was a promising cadet and disappointed that she had quit, went as far as noting in her permanent record that he would support her re-entry if she ever decided to reapply. I remember Chapman. Bit of a hard ass, but I don't know. I kind of like that about him. Torres is surprised to hear that because she always felt that Chapman hated her and couldn't wait to see her kicked out of the Academy. But Janeway explains that some professors like students who challenge their assumptions. And many of Torres' teachers agreed that she had the potential. Many of Torres' teachers agreed that she had the potential to be an excellent officer. The shuttle arrives at the irregularity, and the Dekion beam is charged. They get close enough to fire the beam and do so, causing the hole to start widening. It reaches a 65% increase in growth as the shuttle starts to lose power. They turn around and return to find 2 Voyagers. They only have enough power to reach one with no way to communicate with the rest of the crew. Guessing, Janeway chooses the Voyager on the starboard side of the shuttlecraft, while Torres chooses the one to the port. Janeway realizes that the port one is moving towards the rift, which the real Voyager did 20 minutes ago, whereas the starboard one is pointed away to give them easier access to the shuttle bay. They go with Janeway's suggestion, which is indeed the correct one. Ow! Voyager begins to move towards the rift, which is slowly closing. The rift length reaches 110 meters, which is too small to facilitate the ship's exit. Knowing this is their only chance of escape, Janeway decides they're going to smash their way through and orders full power to the impulse engines as they approach the rift. Shields fail and the port impulse engines lose power. Despite the problems, Voyager is able to punch its way out and clears the singularity. Relieved, Janeway orders that Voyager be at least 100 million kilometers away from the singularity before commencing repairs. In engineering, Chakotay notifies Torres that she has earned the position of chief engineer. Her first duty is to bring the warp drive back online by 1300 hours. She orders some officers to work, but they don't respond until she says, "Please." Torres confronts Carey and asks for his help in her promotion as the new chief engineer. He gladly accepts, stating that she will never get anything but his best, and they both shake hands. Meanwhile, on engineering's upper level, Janeway is observing Torres and the staff, as Chakotay joins her. 2 crew members have already filed complaints on Torres' promotion, and she may be in for a rough period of adjustment, Janeway notes, but she has a feeling that the adversities will soon subside. And back in sickbay, the doctor contacts Janeway again, and once again requests a repair crew to fix his imaging systems, as he is now only several centimeters tall and unable to treat Lieutenant Parrot's scratched hand, much to Tom's amazement. Let's see, the doctor's maybe that tall at this point. I don't know, that's funny. I don't know, I might want to be nice to that hologram. He may develop feelings one day. Or, excuse me, he may evolve one day, and I might need his help. What did you think of that? All right, so let's go behind the scenes. Jim Trombetta pitched the premise for this Star Trek Voyager episode after having pitched several tech-heavy installments to Star Trek Deep Space Nine. Supervising producer Brandon Braga said of the Voyager pitch, his concept was that there was a ship trapped in a quantum singularity, and how do we get it out? The pitch was considered to be hard to execute, however. Trombetta noted that story was very complicated and possibly wasn't completely doable. Braga similarly thought the pitch was a highly technical premise to get working. However, he also particularly liked the premise, referring to it as a very cool idea. Executive producer Jerry Taylor commented, "Parallax started as a really high concept show. Right up Brandon Braga's alley because it has some weird time distorting thing." I like time distorting things. I should have been a temporal mechanic, but hey, I don't know. Suppose it's never too late. Anything's possible. The story pitch was bought early in the development of Star Trek Voyager. Jerry Taylor noted Parallax was one of the first concepts that we bought as we started into story development. The episode had the working title, Deep Time. From the pitch, Brandon Braga developed the script with the help of some other contributors. Jerry Taylor recalled, "We bought the idea of the quantum singularity and then tried to make a story out of it, and several people added to it. The original writer had a vision for it, and Brandon Braga took it over." One influence on this episode was the prospect of bonding the Voyager crew. Executive producer Michael Piller stated, "I wanted the ship out there and into danger to see how the crew reacted. So we created this strange space-time anomaly that we were involved with. And then we were going to see how this crew would work together." Brandon Braga remarked, "We wanted to we wanted to do a Maquis Starfleet adjustment episode, and it needed to come early. It turned out that would be Parallax." That was really early, all right, like the third episode, if you split the pilot. Indeed, at least one of the reasons that Braga was eager to become involved in the early stages of Star Trek Voyager, having missed the chance to work on the writing for the script for the pilot episode Caretaker, due to having been on vacation, happens, was that he wanted to have a hand in developing the characters. Of his earliest influence on the series, he said, "I was involved in developing the stories and wrote the first episode after the pilot. I was very eager to get involved from the beginning for all the obvious reasons. I wanted to see what it was like to shape characters." The idea of B'Elanna Torres' promotion to the head of her department was transplanted into this episode. Jerry Taylor recalled, "We had planned originally to make B'Elanna the chief engineer and Tom Paris the con officer in the pilot, and then it just seemed overkill. So we lifted that out and attached it to this." Having Torres become the chief engineer in this episode not only set her up in that position for the rest of the series, but also provided motive for the tension between the Maquis and Starfleet sides of the crew. Brandon Braga explained, "The series Bible said the chief engineer is B'Elanna Torres. Well, she's not made chief engineer in the pilot. Her earning the job probably should be her first episode, which can embody the Maquis Starfleet conflict that is going on. Because if you make a Starfleet crew, if you make a Maquis chief engineer, there are lots of Starfleet people in line for that job who are going to be pretty pissed off. So that was a good character situation to exploit." Braga also stated, "One of the things we wanted to accomplish with the first episode was getting B'Elanna in a position as chief engineer. So that concept fit a lot of criteria." The episode's script was a difficult one for Brandon Braga to pull together. He noted Parallax was a story that had some problems. While he was trying to write the script, Braga was also taking pitches, 2 or 3 a day, every day, as Jerry Taylor and Michael Piller, the only members of the series writing team at that point, were both busy with helping to cast the series, and stories were needed for the rest of the first season. That sounds like a lot of frickin' work. Braga was unsure while writing this episode how members of the series' main cast would perform the teleplay. "I wrote Parallax without having seen any of the actors perform the roles," he explained. "I didn't know how they were going to do it." That's always fun. It was Brandon Braga who introduced the concept of a duplicated Voyager into the story. Jim Trombetta had come up with the idea of our finding a ship in a quantum singularity, Braga recalled, and there were aliens trapped in there that we helped. "What I did was cut the aliens out and say, wouldn't it be cool if in fact it wasn't another ship? It was us and we've been trapped all along?" Braga also said, "My only twist to Trombetta's pitch was that there is no ship. It's really us and we've been trapped the whole time. We're just looking at a reflection. like being at the bottom of a lake looking up at the ice above. I thought that was kind of a cool thing. And there's the twist about seeing two Voyagers at the end. One is a reflection and one is real. Which one's which? Another facet of the story that Braga introduced related to the hardship of life aboard Voyager. Jerry Taylor stated Brandon set up the conditions of the crew and the ship. For instance, the replicators are not fully functional, so people are on replicator rations. They have to get food and grow. They have to get and grow food. Braga lost no sleep worrying about the particulars of the technobabble used for the anomaly of this episode, as his top priority was dramatizing the plot itself. He explained, normally the way we write stories is we come up with what we want to do dramatically. We add science later. Makes sense. And it works out much better this way. Though a quantum singularity is a mouthful, I decided to use it anyway. But I literally could have called it a quantum fissure, a quantum sinkhole, anything. And who cares? Who really cares? The scene description for the moment when the distant and as yet unidentified future Voyager appears on the screen reads, "We see the image of a distorted spacecraft. The ship is a ghostly smear, murky and wavering, as though seen through a funhouse mirror." Brandon Braga had completed the teleplay by September 1994. The installment's final draft was submitted on October 11th, 1994. In summation of the writing process, Braga noted, "What I tried to do is come up with some interesting twists." He elaborated, "I tried to put as many twists and turns in there as possible. It seemed like a good idea to do a weird time anomaly show because they're generally very popular, and it afforded us the chance to develop conflict between some of the characters." Jerry Taylor was pleased that this episode develops the relationship between Janeway and Torres. We were able to put in place the whole arc of B'Elanna and Janeway, Taylor noted. She also remarked, "I think a nice arc occurs between B'Elanna and Janeway from conflict and skepticism to a real bonding, problem-solving, and, ultimately, affection." Michael Piller liked the character development of not only Janeway and Torres, but also Chakotay. Piller commented, "What appealed to me most about Parallax is how it illuminated the relationship between Chakotay and B'Elanna and Janeway. How Janeway was going to deal with this first issue with the Maquis. How Chakotay was going to be the man in the middle, and how, ultimately, B'Elanna was going to fit into this crew. Essentially, she went from being the most outside force on the ship to being brought into the inner circle. Ultimately, what worked was a triangle between Chakotay, Janeway, and B'Elanna. The more time we spent with that, the better the show became." Excuse me. Lord, I apologize. Woo! As Brandon Braga had been unsure how the regular cast members would perform this episode's script, he found that their interpretations of his written material were completely different of his own. Of course, none of them did it the way I imagined it, he noted. Here we go. For you fans of Seska out there, actress Martha Hackett was cast in this role by director Kim Friedman, who, a few months beforehand, had helmed the Deep Space Nine outing The Search Part 1, in which Hackett had portrayed Rule. I forgot she directed that one. Regarding Seska, Martha Hackett recalled, "When they first gave me the role, they said, she's a member of the Maquis. She's one of Chakotay's gang before they joined up here. She's vigilant about the beliefs of the Maquis, the energy behind that kind of rebel. We're going to do it a little differently." That was the background they gave me. The actress also remembered, "It was clear that her point of view was, we shouldn't have done this. Why did we join up with the Federation? We should have stayed a splinter group." That was all that had been spelled out for me. Robert Picardo has revealed that the episode provided him with a better understanding of his character of the Doctor than he previously had. Picardo remembered, "I didn't quite get the joke until the third episode of the series, where Kes comes into the doctor's office and asks for soil samples. And the doctor goes off on this triad about how he was designed for emergency medical use only, and now every tiny..." I want to say it's Banal, Banal, medical or scientific need was going to be funneled his way, and he was going to be forced to do all these demeaning things in his eyes. Here he was, the combination of everything that we know about medicine in the 24th century. So he has all this wealth of knowledge, and yet any idiot on the crew can turn him on or off like a light switch. Now that would piss me off. And that's what it did to the doctor. It made him mad, and I think that was the first major clue. At the 2009 Dragon Con, Garrett Wang recalled that Kim Friedman sent the cast of Voyager a videotape along with a letter shortly before Parallax was to begin shooting. The letter advised the cast to practice shaking before filming, as the episode had several scenes where Voyager was rocked by the quantum singularity. Friedman had included clips on the videotape of the Deep Space Nine episode she had directed, where she felt the cast of that show had perfected the shaking she wanted. Good on her. Good on her. She got that the crew was young. Good on her. That's a good director right there. A graphic of this episode's singularity was created for the episode, but was ultimately not used here, subsequently being reserved as stock animation in case it was ever needed in later episodes. This episode is a bottle show, the first such installment of Star Trek Voyager. The episode began shooting on Monday, 24 October 1994, a date that did not leave much time for Caretaker to finish shooting and made filming of visual effects, which was busily being undertaken on Caretaker, more hectic than it already was. When production on this episode was well underway, it was decided that several scenes of Caretaker would be reshot. I need a drink after that one. Although this episode's credits name Tom Benko as having been the episode's editor, the official reference book, A Vision of the Future, Star Trek Voyager, claims that the episode was edited by Daryl Baskin. This episode marks the first appearance of both a Type 8 shuttlecraft as well as Voyager Shuttle Bay. Despite both production designer Richard James and scenic art supervisor technical consultant Mike Okuda firmly believing that Voyager should have a shuttlecraft design of its own, the series had no money in its first season budget for the design and construction of such a craft. Consequently, the interior of the shuttlecraft shown here was a slightly modified reuse of sets that have been utilized to show the inside of the Type 6 shuttlecraft in Star Trek The Next Generation. The Type 8 shuttlecraft's exterior was similarly a modified reuse of the Type 6 miniature. James and Okuda later got their wish with the creation of the Class 2 shuttle, which was first introduced in the second season episode Threshold. The name of the Type 8 shuttlecraft in this episode, the Tereshkova, was only decided upon after Mike Okuda had suggested several names that had been rejected by either Richard James or the producers. On 5 December 1994, Okuda considered the name Einstein, but he really wanted a female explorer's name to be used. For several minutes, he brainstormed for names with assistant art director Louise Dorton and senior illustrator technical consultant Rick Sternbuck, tossing suggestions back and forth. These names included Amelia Earhart, Mary Leakey, Marie Curie, Christina McCaffey, and Mae Jemison. Each suggestion was quickly discarded, however, either because it had been used before or it was deemed as being inappropriate, such as out of deference to the woman's family members. Richard James, art director Michael L. Mayer, and scenic artist Whitney Drapanas, Drapanas, arrived and joined in on the discussion. James finally suggested Valentina Tereshkova, a Russian cosmonaut who became the first woman into space, and Okuda liked the suggestion immediately. To create the effect of the shuttlecraft landing in Voyager Shuttle Bay, visual effects coordinator Joe Bauer created a low-budget model of the bay and optically married it to the Voyager studio model. There you have a situation of sizing, Bauer explained. Because the Voyager model is 5 feet and the shuttle model is 1.5 feet to 2 feet, but if it were in scale, it would be about an inch. The shuttle bay doesn't extend as a full set or even as a nice model, so it was a matter of scrounging through some throwaway Deep Space Nine models from last year, and I ended up rebuilding in cardboard a docking bay. We ended up doing a move going back into Voyager, and then did a match move. Scaled the size of the inside of the bay and just composited it. Thank God it all lined up. That was something Emblem Imaging was approached to build, but it became expensive and we needed it quickly. So in this case, it was faster to build a physical model. Nice. A reflection of the shuttle bay is shown in the shuttlecraft's windshield as the craft approaches the bay. Explaining how the bay footage was altered to feature as a reflection, Joe Bauer stated, "We flopped it for that shot, defocused it, then used a device called a System G that could warp a piece of video and just warped it around the edges so it looked like it was defining a bent piece of plexiglass. Then at the point in the POV shot where they are going in the door, we raised the light level inside. Just the kind of detail that tries to sell the shot." It worked. The event horizon of the black hole was essentially a completely new effect. However, it was actually a mix of not only elements that were especially photographed for this episode, but also images from Star Trek's extensive library of stock elements. More specifically, the effect married cloud elements with silver... Not only elements that were especially photographed for this episode, but also images from Star Trek's extensive library of stock elements. More specifically, the effect married cloud elements with silver cloth viewed through ripple glass and liquid nitrogen filmed on the motion control stage at Image G. Philip Barberio, the visual effects supervisor on this episode, commented, "I actually had some money for that show to develop a whole effect, so I played with stuff from our elements books and put this effect together with a cloud element made from liquid nitrogen, put into a Sony System G, then colorized and wrapped in clouds." Sorry about that. The tear in the event horizon proved to be the hardest element of the anomaly to visualize. Phil Barberio stated, "In Parallax, I was drawing a blank on the tear. I asked the writers about it, and they said, a tear you can see space through. Fortunately, visual effects producer Dan Curry had devised an inventive tearing effect using acetone dripped onto styrofoam in front of a light that, as the foam was eaten away, would shine through, producing a very organic-looking effect." "We used that image to start with," Barberio explained. "And then we created this background that was moving in 4 directions. At the same time, very slowly behind the hole, so it gave the look that it was being pulled towards the hole. Then we darkened that and reddened it. The first hole was roundly rejected because it was too big and looked like the ship could sail through easily. They wanted it to be gummy, where the Voyager could barely squeeze through. So we made it smaller and added more veins originally used on the goo monster, the alien caretaker from the pilot. They had some tests that weren't used as we put those into the opening as strands that would attach themselves to the ship as it goes through. As it punches through, you see some residual stuff on the engine. Nothing's ever thrown away. Here we go. For you continuity buffs out there. When Janeway and Torres are returning from their shuttle trip and are faced with both Voyagers, Janeway says she is receiving identical readings from both ships. However, since neither she nor Torres are back on board Voyager at the time, the real ship should have a personnel count of 2 less than its reflection. I didn't think of that. After being introduced in this episode, Seska went on to become a recurring character of the first 2 seasons of Star Trek Voyager, and eventually reveals, I'm gonna keep that to myself. For those of you that haven't seen it, I'm going to keep that to myself. She eventually went on to become a recurring character of the first 2 seasons of Star Trek Voyager. Martha Hackett knew from the time she was hired for this episode that the role of Seska would be recurring, but the writers didn't know what that would mean. They came up with a storyline as it went. Okay, I'm just going to leave it at that with Seska. Well, okay. Of her story, I should say. In this episode, Seska is wearing a Blue Sciences Division uniform, but is sitting at the engineering station on the bridge. She appears in a Yellow Operations Division uniform in later episodes. Martha Hackett has stated that in this episode, she was mistakenly costumed in the wrong color uniform, with the writers still finding their footing in the series at that point. Tom Paris exclaims, "It's the Voyager," instead of "It's Voyager," without the definitive article. This was, in fact, the way that the ship was commonly referred to at this point in the series and in the future in interviews, etc., in keeping with previous Star Trek shows. It's the Enterprise, or it's the Defiant. This episode includes the first appearances of not only a Type 8 shuttlecraft in Voyager Shuttle Bay, but also the starship's conference room. Tuvok is seen as a lieutenant commander in this episode. I have a theory about that, which I'll voice when we get on to that episode. Brandon Braga ultimately felt that in this episode he had written the characters as slightly too hard-edged and that it had taken a while for him to find their proper voices. Shortly after working on the episode, he noted, "Now I know how these actors are, and it's helping a lot. The actors definitely contribute to the creation of the character." Of this episode's completed version, Braga remarked, "Too much tech, but some clever twists and some great character work. All in all, a good episode." He also elaborated, "It's a very techy episode, and some people weren't too thrilled with it for that reason." Yeah, it was techy. It was kind of hard to follow, but at the same time, I liked it. It was a good character episode, I'll call it. I thought it had some great character work in it. See? I went along with that one. I also thought it was a good time anomaly show, something we had never seen, and it had a good twist when you realized the ship was Voyager. The lady or the tiger gag at the end was a lot of fun. I remember reading that. Crap. Sorry, I got sidetracked. Thought it had some great character work in it. I also thought it was a good. Okay, the lady or the tiger gag at the end was a lot of fun, and I thought it had some good stuff in it. Another reason why Braga was pleased with this episode was that both the character development herein and the episode's scientific plot line are very much connected. He observed, "I've always felt the best storytelling on The Next Generation and Voyager are stories that have an A and B plot, and the A and B plots are they're connected, as in parallax, or at least thematically connected." It's dead, Jim. It's dead, Jim. Looks like I'm going to coast in on fumes, as it were. Braga also found, however, that the anomaly was ultimately too complex for viewers, he opined. The quantum parallax is hard to grasp. Braga took full responsibility for this level of complexity, adding, "Regrettably, that's my fault." Both Jerry Taylor and Michael Piller liked how this episode balances character work with high-concept science fiction. Piller declared, "What made this show work for me was that this was a show about a crew coming together and not about a ship in jeopardy." That's true. I'll go along with that. Jerry Taylor stated that even though the episode evolved from a highly technical premise, Brandon was able to write a script that I think made the crew struggle with "We're out here and things are not working, and what do we do? Who's going to be the doctor, and who's going to be the chief of engineering?" So even though it felt high concept, it was very strongly rooted in character. In addition, Taylor expressed approval of how Braga used the episode to establish some of the circumstances that the Starship Voyager and its crew find themselves in, saying that introducing these elements was giving the series writing staff things that we were able to work to have fun with. This episode achieved a Nielsen rating of 9.2 million homes and a 14% share. I don't know what that means. Oh, here we go. Maybe this will tell me. It was the most watched episode of Voyager's first season on its first airing, except for the series pilot Caretaker. I don't care about Cinefantastique. In their ultimate reference book, I'll go ahead and mention it. Cinefantastique give this installment 3 out of 4 stars. Yay, 75%. That's passing. In their unofficial reference book, Trek Navigator, the ultimate guide to the entire Trek saga, co-writer Mark Altman rates this episode 2.5 out of 4 stars, defined as average, while fellow co-writer Edward Gross rates this installment 3 out of 4, defined as good. Altman describes the outing as a surprisingly effective techno-romp, enthusing about how the pilot's technicalities are offset by the way that the episode embraces character problems with gusto, and how it presents the technobabble in a more or less straightforward manner. He approves of the way in which the episode tackles the simmering conflict between the two portions of Voyager's crew, saying that the episode does so with wit and intelligence that elevates it. He raves, "The show succeeds marvelously in further defining the series ensemble in an effective and satisfying way." Excuse me. In addition, Altman characterizes time-related briefing room discussion between Janeway and Paris as amusing, but is less enthusiastic about the storyline involving the Doctor's shrinking. Excuse me. Saying the joke doesn't quite work. Gross remarks on the originality for an anomaly episode of having a duplicate Voyager as a conceit and says that the real meat of the outing is the character interactions, especially the choosing of the ship's chief engineer. He concludes that the slowly developing relationship between Janeway and Torres is both fascinating and believing to watch. The unauthorized reference book Delta Quadrant gives this episode a rating of 7 out of 10. A little underpassing, but that's alright, technically passing. In its retrospective Ultimate Guide, Star Trek Magazine gives this episode 3 out of 5, Starfleet-style arrowhead insignia. That's cute. Finally, ultimately, Jim Trombetta wished that Voyager's regular writing team had taken his pitch in a slightly different direction than they had. They said it should have come out was there really shouldn't have been 2 Voyagers. There should have been 3. Oh, shoot. That would have been fun. He mused. I wanted them to send the hologram doctor to each ship by crushing him into a burst of energy, sending him to the next one to warn them. It would have started out with him arriving on their ship trying to warn them but not being able to do it because he's all garbled. The original idea was more metaphysical and less character. It was what's going on and how do I figure it out. That, I'm not going to lie, would have been an interesting idea. Ladies and gentlemen, I have already killed my beverage. So, with that being said, I want to take the time to thank you all for taking the time to watch this video, however you're doing it. Doing it off YouTube, off Facebook, which if you click off Facebook, it takes you to YouTube. So, I want to take the time to thank you for watching this on YouTube, be it on your phone, your TV, your computer, tablet, however you're doing it. I want to thank you. It's already dead, so I'm going to go ahead and proceed to warp out of here. Ladies and gentlemen, take care. Have an awesome night or day. Don't do anything I wouldn't do, and if you do, name it after me. Don't drink and drive because, let's face it, you might spill your drink, but more importantly, you might kill yourself or someone else. And drinking and driving is worse than being a Twilight fan. And what's worse than that is rooting for cheating bastards like Tom. Giselle won't let me go to the Pro Bowl, and now that Eli's clinched his playoff spot, if I face him in the Super Bowl, he's going to beat my ass. Brady, men slapping women, racism, animal abuse, fake friends, people who welch on bets, or anyone who's a member of, supports, or defends ISIS, the website Agony Booth, or the Westboro Baptist Church. Did you know they tried to picket Leonard Nimoy's funeral? They couldn't get it done because they couldn't find it. Things like that are highly illogical, and I will not make time for them. Ladies and gentlemen, as always, I wish you all live long and prosper. This may or may not be the final entry of Stardate 16XXXX. We'll see.